Hello and welcome to the Less Traveled Path to True Purpose. I'm your host, Lora LeFhae, and I'm so happy that you're joining us today. My wonderful guest is a purpose guide. He's an author, team builder, and a community leader. He is Peele, and his purpose is to help you find purpose. He is a co-teacher of the Man on Purpose course and the Purposepreneur course. Brandon is focused on creating a world where 7 billion people are living their purpose. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you, Laura. It's wonderful to be here.
I have to say, that is a very ambitious goal, and I'd love for you to tell me about that to start off.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's all sort of, at least the latest iteration of my purpose began kind of this spring, and I started to play the question, what would our world look like if everyone knew their purpose? If essentially we were doing things we loved and got well paid to do it, if we governed ourselves from a deeply honest and intellectually sober perspective, inclusive of science and all the important things that are necessary to govern a population. And what I quickly kind of came up with the hypothesis that purpose is likely the kind of salvation of humanity, meaning that not only does it make our own lives better, that I've fleshed out in the science of purpose. We can talk a little bit more about that. It's also absolutely necessary and critically relevant for our species to emerge from this really horrific political, ecological, social, economic situation that we've created for ourselves. So without purpose, I do believe it is quite likely that humanity will collapse. And NASA and the UN have issued reports saying just as much. So it's like I come to it from the same perspective as a lot of folks. Like, it is definitely best practices for moving your life forward, and also it is required by our species for survival. So that's kind of where this goal came from. Like, well, let's get after it already. Let's get everyone finding their purpose. And it's shown up in a lot of different ways. Obviously, I do coaching and training and teaching on purpose. And this summer, I'm launching a global 21-day purpose challenge that is designed to engage the entire English-speaking population with a start-to-finish purpose experience that'll begin July 8th of this summer.
Wow.
So there's a lot going on, and in that there's a declaration of purpose, like how we radically change ourselves, our families, communities, politics, and economic environment with purpose, as well as a book coming out in the fall called The Purpose Revolution. So it's designed to not only help people, but also to save us from ourselves.
Wonderful. That's certainly a worthy goal. I don't know if there's a more worthy goal, in fact. So how do you define purpose?
Yeah, so many different ways, right? I think it is often tethered to the word meaning in that, but I believe it's significantly different. The way I hold meaning is like that is a normal human function, just like breathing. We are meaning-making machines. We will create meaning and have meaning created for us as just a function of being sentient. And that's not the same thing as purpose. So it can be meaningful relationships. We can like some meaning we see in a movie. We can make meaning out of nothing by a pattern we see on the sidewalk. But purpose is different. Purpose, the way I hold it, is that purpose is the message of your soul. It is kind of a 3-part message that describes your being, like your essence, your gifts or talents, so like the things that bring you alive, that that are a contribution to yourself and potentially a contribution to others. And then the last piece is mission. And so that's like, how do you focus your innate, effortless qualities, as well as the things that you love to do, in a concrete way? So where you're not saying yes to everything, you're actually saying no to most things, so you could focus everything on achieving some goal. Like, so for example, like I'm working on this 7 billion purpose people goal. So recently I was offered the CEO position of a startup, which would have been great and could have been cool, and I could have implemented all these purpose management techniques and purpose product features, but I said no to it, and because I'm focused on my mission, which is 7 billion people living their purpose. So yeah, and as you may or may not know, this is directly from Tim Kelly, a man who I hold in very high regard, who wrote the book True Purpose, and his method and format is, I think, probably second to none. I really love that definition.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's intrinsic purpose?
You mean it's something that we always have, Or
yeah. Do you think we come with something in particular, or do you think it's something like you said with the three parts that we sort of develop out of a particular essence?
Yeah. So I'm going to say yes and no. So like, the way I understand Tim's model and other teachers who have talked about this idea of essence versus kind of something more active is that, yes, essence is definitely intrinsic. It is an endemic quality. So it is the Laura-ness of Laura, like that part of you that was always true, or what I'll just call, kind of divine perfections. So maybe like you're curious, or you're kind, or you're loving, or you're creative, and it's these very qualities that were probably first noticed by your parents when you were a child, and they will be, that's why people love you now, and they will likely be with you all the way to the very end. And so there's that piece of it, that kind of divine perfection piece that, we always are. And, we can, of course, structure our lives to create more opportunity to express them, but that is an immutable truth that doesn't change. That said, the other two pieces definitely change. So, like, as you move through life, you begin to develop mastery in your, in your gifts and your blessings, your talents, and you begin to kind of see things more holistically. So maybe just taking one tiny example, like let's say you're really good at addition, and then you pick up subtraction and pretty soon multiplication and division, and then you're really good at math. So your blessing moved from addition to math, and then maybe a couple more years later you learn algebra and trigonometry, and then your blessing expands to differential equations or to engineering, and then maybe from engineering to, I don't know, civic planning or something of that nature. So that is kind of how a blessing will evolve over time. And then the mission also evolves because it's very much like a SMART goal. Have you spent any time in corporate America, Laura?
A little bit, yes, I have.
Idea of a SMART goal, like specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time-bound, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is something that is over. It means like, you say, I'm going to create a world of 7 billion people living up to this by 2020. So I either achieve it or I don't. And when I achieve it, I'm going to have to go back to the world, go back to my soul and say, okay, soul, what is next? Like, what is the next thing for me to do? And I have some idea about what that might be, but first things first, I've got to achieve my goal. And so that sort of stuff, it evolves over time. Does that make sense, Laura?
Yes, that definitely makes sense. So then how do you, tell me about your work, how you work with people in regards to this.
So I do a lot of different things. I spend most of my time doing one-on-one coaching, and that's usually a 3 to 4 month process. And, I have created a bunch of different proprietary processes, but for the most part, I'm pretty much a Tim Kelly zealot. Like, I love his book, True Purpose. I feel like it kind of speaks to the heart of the matter. It's, the least triggering from a religious perspective. It's based mostly on this psychological model called internal family systems. So it's the most, I would say, what's the right word? Analytical and less kind of faith-based. But I do love all the faith-based stuff. I love Rod Stryker, love Bill Plotkin, medicine ceremonies like San Pedro and ayahuasca. I mean, all these things that are kind of more on the spiritual end of the spectrum, I love. I just, I'm not a shaman, so I don't do tea ceremonies. I basically spend my time working with folks in a very kind of straightforward Tim Kelly manner.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about Man on Purpose, the program there, mapping your life and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I again, this is another thing I can't really take any credit for because I am just the teacher of that course. That course was created by Chris Kyle, who's my current co-teacher on the course, as well as another gentleman named George Durrani. And we are all part of this organization called the Mankind Project. which is an international men's organization that is designed to give men, one, a sense of community, meaning to create authentic male intimacy, where men can self-express and can own their emotions and not have to channel everything through, lust and anger, but we can be sad and experience shame and, and to have just like a really honest connection. And so that's part of the mission of the organization. The other piece is like kind of to begin this purpose conversation, to dive deep into our own wounding and to find out what it is we truly care about and the change we're committed to in the world, and to start to craft a mission-driven, a purpose-driven life from that. So the organization kind of has two parts right now, or two big parts. There's just the kind of 3-day initiation for men where you go out into the woods and all the kind of fun / rah-rah man type stuff. I can't, unfortunately, really, reveal too much. Just
no, that's okay.
I'm bound by secrecy, but it's very much this kind of fraternal brotherhood of like loving, kind men who are integrating these kind of 4 primal energies: the lover, the warrior, the magician, and the king. And so the idea is that once you complete this 3-day experience, you're then part of the brotherhood, and you can kind of sit in a circle, in a men's circle that meets regularly or semi-regularly. Like I sit in one every Tuesday night, but we get to go kind of deeper into our own wounds, our own places that we're stuck, and bring more light and awareness to. So this organization is a pretty, I think, probably the most successful men's organization. And one of the things that Chris noticed, and one of the things that I share about it too, is that we only touch on the idea of purpose and masculinity. And so Chris created this course to allow any man, regardless of whether or not you're affiliated with the Mankind Project, to find their life's purpose and to develop tools to overcome all the challenges that we come to on the way. All the kind of negative self-talk, the critic, the skeptic, the image consultant, the risk manager, all these things that historically keep people who know their purpose from actually living it. So that's what we do. We guide them through this process now 3 years running that helps men find the purpose, deepen it, and gain the tools to actually live it out in their relationships and their job and the world.
I mean, you would know better than I it doesn't seem like there are many programs for men.
Changing a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with, I would say, sociological things. As men, if you were born anytime in the last 70 years, you kind of realize that this world was kind of made for us. We got all the privileges, all the enculturation to be kind of good enough at just as we are. And so by the time life starts to throw us curveballs, most men are still so ingrained in this idea that they're fine enough as they are, that they can stay in isolation, that they can just work harder, drive faster, find a new girlfriend, find a new car, find a new job, whatever it is. That they don't actually need to go within and play with the program, like play with the software, as I like to call it. Whereas women and by extension all marginalized groups, homosexuals, African Americans, Hispanics, folks who are not part of the in crowd are more oriented towards making some changes because they realize this society was not created for them. It was created for essentially rich, urban, white men. And so that's why, as you probably know, like 60 to 70% of all people in therapy are women. It's not because women have more problems. It's because women knew from go that this place was not created with their happiness and fulfillment in mind. So they want to figure out why. Why are they unhappy? Whereas men come in with this completely different narrative, like, I'm fine enough as I am. I just need to do one thing different, but not actually really look at my issues. So luckily that is changing. The men's movement started in the 80s, and men are starting to go within, and obviously our organization is growing like gangbusters. It's wonderful to see, but it's long overdue, as you know.
Yeah. Wow, great. That is so well articulated. I really appreciate your saying that. So how does purpose make a difference in people's lives once somebody finds their purpose and starts to move along that trajectory? What happens?
Yeah, great question. Because it is that there are a number of things that happen. I'm starting to flesh out this concept called the 4 or 5 ecstasies of purpose. And so what I'll call the first ecstasy is just awareness that there is such a thing. Because if you're living this default life, the meaning of your life is more or less a given, meaning it's dictated by parental expectations, subconscious fears, desires, by your spiritual community, by your society. And when we get that there is such a thing as a personal purpose, when we start to kind of read the research, if you go to my website under free, you'll see the science of purpose or the research behind purpose. And you start to see that people who find and start living with explicit relationship to this idea of a unique human purpose, that they begin to have this incredible life. They live longer, they have better relationships, better sex, they're making more money, they're more fulfilled, they're more engaged, they're more kind of civically oriented, they're more eager to learn, they have healthier brains, healthier hearts. It's like basically every possible thing you could conceive of as being good in the world is tied to purpose. So as soon as somebody gets that, they're like, wow, this is great. How come nobody told me this? And it creates this opening. Like, wow, I can make a few kind of significant software tweaks, or operating system tweaks, and really my whole experience of life can change. So that's the first one. The second one is what I'll call, after you do this kind of first pass at what it is that you're great at, what it is that you love to do, the kinds of qualities that you embody, as you start to get some feedback, both from yourself and from your close community, you start to see yourself, really for the first time abstractly. And meaning other people are saying basically the same thing about you. They're saying, you're so kind, or you're so intelligent, or you're so curious. And you really start to get this clear mirror of who you are, at least who your essence is at your deeper level. That's like the second one. It's like when you start to do some of these initial purpose discovery exercises that anyone can do that right now for free. They're all over the internet. They're all over literature. That's like the second piece. The third piece is, and this is where we're going to get into a little bit more theory here, of the kind of internal family system model. And so the idea here is that once we examine our psychology, so once we kind of deconstruct how our personalities were created, there's freedom in that. So like the third ecstasy is understanding that how we became who we are, meaning how we began to fear all the things we're afraid of, how we begin to desire all the things that we desire, how we got good at all the things that we do. There's freedom in that because suddenly we view all these different voices, so our critic, our skeptic, our image consultant, our risk manager, our wounded child, we view them all with a degree of agency, meaning like we start to talk to them individually. So I can have a conversation with my critic. I'll be like, critic, when did you first show up in my life? Oh, when you were 6, during this incident. Are you modeled after anyone in my life? Yes, I'm your dad. What is it that you want from me? I don't want you to look like a fool. I don't want you to be rejected. I don't want you to have all this stuff, all these bad things, all these kind of future injuries. And what role do you want to play in my life after I find my purpose? Well, I want to be your consultant who helps you fine-tune your purpose project or whatever it is. And so once we get to know all these different pieces, then we negotiate with them. We say, all right, critic, what do you need to be happy so that I can talk to my soul and actually listen to its message, listen to my purpose? And the critic will say, well, just make sure that you don't launch anything without having a conversation with your Uncle Steve, who's like a good person to think through a plan. And if you do that, I will step out of the way, go find your purpose, go wild. So once you kind of take all these voices that were previously just kind of in the attic, kind of like shouting down randomly, kind of making us all crazy. And once you take them down and sit them in the foyer and actually have a one-on-one conversation with each of them, there's this levity. At least for me, it was like a jailbreak. Like I felt, the inclination of my sternum changed by 5 to 10 degrees. I felt like I was 10 feet tall, that anything was possible. I still didn't know my purpose, but I was like, wow, I can see why I've become such a jerk, and I can see like what the next step is. So I, obviously can choose to be a jerk or not choose to be a jerk. Like I'm not bound to be a jerk now. And so there's this freedom, this kind of like, wow, I really know myself well. I know how I got here. I know all my wounding. I know what I'm good at. And now it's this place of possibility. I can create. I can live purposefully in my health and my relationships and my career. And so what I'll call it, the last one, maybe the second to last, depending on how far we want to go over this. But the last one is basically the revelation. And that's like when you have some sort of facilitated soul access experience, whether that's like a vision quest or like a ayahuasca ceremony or kind of a voice dialogue, kind of Jungian inspired discussion with your own soul, and you really start to get what it is, who you are at your deepest level, what you care about, what you do next, who's involved. The soul just starts spitting out answers. At least that's how it was for me. That's how it's been for a number of my clients, where they really get what they need to do next. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it's nothing. I've had a lot of folks who I've coached and they're like, you're doing everything great. Now that you have this place of self-acceptance and self-love, you just need to start living it more deeply. And so sometimes folks don't do a darn thing different. That said, there are folks who, that was their experience during coaching or during a program, that will come back to me and say, I just made a bunch of big changes, and I didn't think they had anything to do with the purpose coaching, but they certainly did. Like, a woman came to me and said that she quit smoking after 40 years, cold turkey. I'm like, what? That's amazing. She's like, yeah, I finally, I was meditating and reading my Eckhart Tolle, and I just kind of got that this is stupid. I really need to stop doing it. And
that's great.
And, she just felt free, like, spiritually, emotionally free to kind of make that decision. And so she did it. Other times people are like, I'm changing everything. Like I'm leaving my husband, I'm quitting my job, I'm moving to the other side of the world, or sometimes people do that. And I always try to caution them not to do that right away. I'm not saying don't leave your terrible relationship or terrible job or other behaviors, but some folks are just like they get it. They get really clear and they just start making rapid changes, like one right after another, and it is just astounding. And then literally 6-12 months later, they're living an entirely different life. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll just kind of throw this last one out as kind of a bonus. Ecstasy. This is sort of how I understand Hindu or Tantra philosophy, is that once purpose becomes clear, once your dharma is revealed, then your whole life kind of starts to integrate. And in this tantric philosophy, they talk about these 4 primary desires: the artha, which is livelihood; dharma, which is purpose; kama, pleasure; and moksha, which is liberation or spirituality. And that once dharma becomes clear, then kama, moksha, and artha become one and the same. You get pleasure, you get rewarded, and you begin to experience transcendence through your purpose. And the idea here, and again, I haven't experienced this, but this is what the philosophy points to, is that once we find our purpose, our whole lives essentially become karma yoga. We are living fully selflessly in service of the divine in our own unique way. And the idea is that you do that after X number of years or breath, you will experience samadhi or nirvana. So that potentially is the last one. I'll let you know when I get there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to do another interview for sure. That is, if you're willing to communicate with language. What holds people back? I mean, this is so great. It changes your life. It gives you deeper, richer experience. What holds people back from doing it?
Well, there's a couple things. Short answer is resistance, right? And any time, we experience ourselves inactive or stuck or not moving in a direction that we know we ought to be, we're resisting. And this is kind of where I think this is why I love Tim Kelly's process so much, because there's all this purpose discovery stuff out there, right? Like, there's a gazillion different paths, teachers, but very few of them actually do that psychological excavation where you begin to see the source of all the resistance. So, the critic is basically his form or her form of resistance is arrows in, meaning it just kind of diminishes you, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm fat, whatever. And those are the reasons we end up believing to not do the things that we love. And then there's a skeptic who basically is more like arrows out, or it doesn't matter, everything is, the world's going to hell, nobody's going to be transformed, everyone's fat and lazy, even if I live in it, I won't be successful. And then the risk manager is essentially just doesn't want anything to change whatsoever, just wants to be as safe as possible. So those messages will be like, oh, it's too risky. Remember so-and-so who failed, or that one time you picked last in kickball, or whatever it is. Like they'll keep generating reasons to not take a risk. That won't have anything to do with you or reality. It'll just be like these random reasons that don't make any sense, only to the risk manager. And so when we do this psychological excavation, we get this source of our resistance. And this is why I was talking about this kind of the third ecstasy, is that once you see that every time there's resistance, there's always a way to trace it back to the genesis of our personality. And now that we have this agency to that critic or to that skeptic, we say, oh, critic, you're welcome. Thank you. So I see that you have some concerns around me taking on this new education program, or around me ending my relationship, or around me whatever. Tell me more about that. And so there's a reframe process that that Chris Kyle invented that we use in our Men on Purpose course, and use something very similar in the Tim Kelly work. But it's how to take that voice of resistance, make it personal, and then thank it, and then still choose purpose. And often it can be done alone. Like I can process myself, and I know a lot of other people that can, but it's much easier to do in community, in a circle. So I would say the other kind of twin terror of not living a purpose is isolation. So when resistance shows up, if you're really skilled, you can process yourself, but it's a lot easier to do in community, in a relationship. So I always recommend to everybody, regardless of interest and purpose, to find out or to seek out a support circle. Ideally, same gender support circle. That will be a trusted group of folks who are hopefully have skills in processing your resistance and helping you see what's behind it, helping you hopefully tie it back to an inner voice, a protector, like a critic or something.
Well, I could talk to you for another hour easily. Lots of things have come to mind that I'd love to ask you, but we're just about out of time. And so Are there any practical steps, or are there any things that you'd like to offer the listeners who are just getting started?
Yeah, a number of things that I'd love to help folks out with. So if you know your purpose, great. That just means you probably need a little bit of help with resistance. And there's some free videos on my website. So if you go under EVR1, Edward Victor Ralph, and the number 1.co, Charlie Oscar. Under videos, you'll see blasting through resistance, and those can be helpful. If you're still having problems, I would definitely reach out to a coach. Any recommended life coach can help you with resistance. Not so much probably on the purpose discovery piece, but definitely blasting through resistance. Coaches are usually trained well in doing that. If you don't know your purpose, there's a number of options to explore. So the first, and I'll start with the easiest one, that is to go to purposeactivationblueprint.com. And that is a 10-page ebook that has 4 practical steps to find and live your purpose. And so Chris Kyle and I and the team at Mankind Project offered this out as a free resource to anybody, regardless of gender, to find and live their purpose. The next step up from that is to really say, okay, wow, this is cool, but I feel like I could use the support, but I still don't want to spend any money on a coach or a program. go to planetpurpose.org, and that is the 21-day Purpose Challenge that's going to be launching July 8th. And so there'll be a Facebook community, and we're going to go through 21 days of purpose discovery, resistance, tools, exercises, and finally kick you out of the program with your very own purpose project. And now you have this whole community of purpose seekers who are there to support you, help you with resistance, etc. And so those are kind of some free options, and I think those are valuable. I would highly recommend, if you have a kind of a Western analytical leaning, Tim Kelly. If you have an Eastern leaning, Rod Stryker's The Four Desires. And if you have kind of a nature or kind of pagan leaning, I would highly recommend Bill Plotkin's Nature and the Human Soul. So those are kind of three teachers, I think, that are very good at soul access, soul discovery, to get you in direct contact with that part of you that knows your purpose.
Great. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time today. It's been really, really wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you so much for your work. I mean, we need more folks having this purpose conversation because it is so powerful. There's really no more important change to make in your life, assuming you have a roof over your head and you've got food and all that. Next thing,
right. You've got to kind of get past that survival piece to get involved in purpose.
Amen.
Thank you so much, and thank you all of you out there for listening.